We explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode, a Thursday episode, a rare Thursday episode of the Security Squawk podcast with our new cool background where we're all in like little TV screens or something like that. I don't know what we're doing.
We should start singing the Brady Bunch.
I know, right? It's like Hollywood Squares or something.
More like just the squares.
There you
go. Yeah.
There is. Just be positive. No problem. Start the day off good. So, what's up, guys? Got a lot to talk about. Got a lot to get into. Before we do, remember, we have a fee for the show, and the fee is just share our show. Like, share, subscribe. We got it down there on the screen now in neon, so you remind you as we're talking to just pay that fee, and we'll continue to do the show ad-free. It's that simple. So, pay the fee, and it's ad-free. All right, let's get into it. So today's topics, we are going into a lot of stuff today, guys. First one, we got a data breach over at this group called HealthEquity. HealthEquity is a major HSA provider in the U.S. and has experienced a significant data breach impacting 4.3 million individuals. The incident involved the theft of sensitive health data due to compromised credentials. The breach was detected on June 26th, but occurred back in March. The compromised data includes your social security number, your employer ID, and much more. And HealthEquity is providing credit monitoring services to affected individuals. So let's get into, guys, what's the broader implications of this healthcare related / financial services breach, because that's kind of what it is if you understand what HealthEquity does.
It's basically this is just more juicy personal details added to the criminals' databases that they have that their version of ChatGPT can use to make more targeted specifically targeted emails. Like we call those spear phishing, but that's really what it is. Every time one of these happens, man, you're just adding more data that can be used to get people tricked and get people to give up information and give up credentials and all that jazz.
Andre,
what's that? The same script, different cast, you know.
I know, right? It's it's interesting. So that kind of brings me to my next point or my next question of where I was going to go with this conversation. But why, like, we keep seeing this stuff, happening to companies, things like compromised credentials, right? Compromised credentials that were stolen or found in some way. And then these attackers were able to get into this company as a result of those. What can companies do to better protect their users' credentials? And what are things what could this company do to improve their situation so they don't fall victim again? And other companies can learn from this by not doing what this company did. So kind of, I don't have the details in front of me on my screen. I don't know if we know the details of, or we can look them up quickly of how the credentials were compromised so we can give more specific advice to this situation. But just in general, like, what can companies do to make sure that they're aware of compromised credentials, and what are ways that credentials can be compromised? I guess that's another question we can help people understand. So let's just start there. What are ways credentials can be compromised? Because we hear this word compromised credentials, like, okay, well, how did that happen?
Well, so these breaches can all be related in one way or another. So let's just say my login is my password and then text is 1, 2, 3 exclamation. Well, maybe I used that to log into T-Mobile or AT&T or both, and those have been hacked and they've been leaked on the dark web. And so now they can just go through and try with that username and that password combo. They can go through and try all kinds of things. You know, one time we did a cybersecurity risk assessment. We were presenting the results to the CEO of a small company. And, you know, we'd only found one password that was leaked on the dark web. It was like his Fitbit. And when we told him, I thought he got angry, but really he got really nervous because he said, I used that password for everything. And, you know, that's bad. That's one way that these can get out is passwords being used in, you know, the same password being used in different places.
And then them being exposed in a hack. Yeah, like the most common one that I use and talk about is that LinkedIn hack, right? That's how a long time ago a lot of passwords got onto the dark web, was through this LinkedIn hack, and then hackers used that database as a reference point to try to hack people for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at this point, I hope most people have rotated that password out, but I'm sure there's still some people where, you know, there's some combination or some similarity to that password used way back when LinkedIn got hacked, you know, today. So we know it happens. We know it's common. We know password hygiene is a problem, and that's one of the ways you can solve it. But Andre, what's another way that employee credentials can become compromised, right? We know that they can end up on the dark web, like Randy said, but what's another way that, you know, employees can give up their credentials to a cyber criminal besides it being found on the dark web through some other third-party breach?
Well, for us, what we typically see is through phishing emails, where they get an email, it looks legit, and then they're asked to put in their Microsoft 365 username and password. And it's usually from these type of incidents where, you know, a new email, like Randy was saying with phishing, you know, new email comes in. And this actually comes to a point I wanted to make is look at the gap of when it happened. It happened in March. They began to be able to verify it in June. And then they told the people that got affected in August. So that's 5 months for these bad guys to have claimed that they were HealthEquity and try to, you know, get the same thing that we're talking about, get them to put in their username and password. If you're a patient or customer of HealthEquity, and boom, they got your information.
Yeah, and can we camp on that for just a few seconds here, Brian?
I love camp.
By the fact that they were logged in for so long, we're seeing over and over as companies come to us hacked, we're seeing a delay. We're seeing that hackers in like what you wouldn't consider like hacker central, you know, like Morocco or, you know, Nigeria or someplace like that are getting access. And then there's another set of IP addresses, say like in Eastern Europe or someplace like that, that will come in after, but it's after some amount of time. My opinion on that is there's a backlog. There's a backlog. They're not able to get to them all. It's really what it seems like. Or they have so many high quality hacks to choose from, because I think you have like the low level hackers that are getting access, and then they're selling it to the high level hackers who are going in and getting the money. And I think there must be so many high level hacks that their hands are full or whatever, but there seems to be this long period of time, not that they're in there, you know, getting stuff and offloading stuff and all that, but they've got the access and they're not able to sell it to anybody, or it takes a while to sell to anybody. Anyway, short story long, it is super disturbing how long they were in the system before it was actually, for a million other reasons as well that we've talked about, super disturbing that they were in there for so long, and super disturbing from beginning until the people affected were actually notified.
Can we also talk about supply and demand? Because once this information is out and it's being sold on the dark web, we kind of see like, they're being sold for like $1, $1.50, like really cheap. So does that mean that there's so much information out there to be purchased that, like, because if it was not that much, then you would think they would be able to get more?
Yeah, it's honestly, like, it's funny you say it like this, because you would be surprised how many businesses operate like this. And I'll give you an example, meaning we have clients in like the used car wholesale side of the used car business, right? And when they buy cars, typically they're not buying cars from dealerships. Like when you go and trade in your car and a dealership buys it, right? He now has this car in his inventory. And if they are not going to sell that car themselves, which they typically, when they bring a car in, they typically only resell on their own lot about 20% of the cars. So the other 80%, they send to the auction. So they have an auction rep come to these dealerships and buy like pools of cars, right? And they know some of those cars are going to go for high profit margin, and they know some of those cars are going to go for low profit margin, but they got to figure out a ballpark number for buying like a lot of 30 cars. Right. And it kind of like averages itself out. And that's kind of what's going on here with selling this information. Not everything that they give away or sell is going to be good. Right. It's not going to work. Right. But 70% of it will. Right. So that's why they have to sell it at such a low cost, because somebody has to do legwork to. It's not like access brokers, right? Who they're in the network. They're selling that for tens of thousands of dollars, right? When you're just selling like usernames and passwords and things like that, and people have to still do work to get in, you're usually seeing numbers like you're mentioning, right? But it's still a market, right? It still can be sold for something, and that's the big thing that people, I don't think, is resonating with people. Is it like companies get hacked and nothing happens? That's what people think right now. Mm-hmm. Companies get hacked, nothing happens. Well, those days are coming to an end, right? And it's because of everything you're talking about. They're selling this information for pennies on the dollar, meaning it's a very lucrative business. Like, it's a very lucrative way to get leads for your hacking business. It's what it is at the end of the day, right? It's a lead for somebody to hack is what you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, because they said roughly 4 million names, and let's just say 4 million people. So even if you are selling it for $1, that's $4 million. So okay, so it's not that bad.
Right, but you're also making it affordable to somebody who might only want 10,000 of those names, or can only afford 10,000 of those names, right? So the other thing I'll add to this is, in terms of what people need to be aware of, or companies need to be aware of in terms of credential compromise, is just to kind of add on to what Andre said. And that's just to be aware of social engineering scams, where you, instead of a phishing email that you're clicking on, you're getting some kind of a phone call or some kind of social media message that's either getting you to click on it or give that information over the phone. We've seen all kinds of different things, and you would think like, well, yeah, my employees would never give their username and password over the phone to somebody. Well, we've seen it happen. They pretend to be from IT. They pretend to be helping them out. And it's like, hey, give me your username and password so I can, help you out or log in or whatever. And boom, now they have the username and password, and they are not talking to IT. Like, these things do happen. That is another way that credentials get compromised by these cyber criminals. So, all right, guys, moving right along.
No, hold up. Me and Andre both have something we want to add.
Oh, no.
You first, Andre.
15 minutes on the health equity topic. Let's go.
A lot of good stuff here.
It took roughly 5-6 months for them, from the time it happened for them to the time they told us about this.
Yep.
How many months of that time do you think that was closed board meetings with attorneys and strategists of how they're going to now put this out to the public?
6 months,
The whole
December,
6 months. Yeah.
February of next year.
No. What I'm saying is, from the time it happened to the time it was publicly announced,
Right.
that was about 5-6 months.
Right.
And out of that 6 months, how much of that time is them taking how's our strategy going to be to the public when we tell this to our shareholders and so forth like that? So in other words, I'm saying is, I'm sure that a lot of that time was just them holding on to the information.
You think?
I would think. So we have this information. We got to go tell. I don't know. I think it would be.
I think what I think,
Mhm.
or at least what I'm reading, is that these guys were on the network, but it wasn't detected until June 26th. So they've only known that this was a problem since June 26th.
It's August 1, though.
Right. So I don't. Is that what you're saying? So from June 26th till now, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying, Andre?
Yeah. I think
Okay,
that.
I thought you meant back. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying from March until now.
Okay.
Right. So I got you. Yeah. So I mean, a month. I mean, I'm not going to say that's the end of the world. They're a private company, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't really have any reporting requirements. So as long as I don't know enough about their compliance at this point, but as long I'm sure they did everything within their requirements. And you're right that, I personally wouldn't blame them for taking their time. If they weren't required to report until now, then yeah, take your time, do it right.
My comments related to that, it's funny because I'm seeing it as a glut that there's not enough bad guys to get around to all the opportunities. Y'all were saying right after that there's a glut because there's so much info and not enough bad guys to sort through it all. They got to lower the price. The bottom line is this does not bode well for the next 3 to 6 months as all of this stuff gets worked through and turned
I think it's
into
years.
a criminal endeavor.
I think they have years of opportunity.
Crazy.
And the younger you are, the more risk you have.
For sure.
So, all right, let's move along because we have another healthcare disruption this week. OneBlood ransomware attack. OneBlood faced a ransomware attack that severely disrupted its operations, impacting blood supplies across the southeastern U.S. The attack encrypted OneBlood's virtual machines, significantly reducing their operational capacity. Sounds like they were using VMware. Over 250 hospitals are now enacting critical blood shortage protocols, and the attack highlights the vulnerabilities in our healthcare infrastructure. So I guess this is considered a critical healthcare services for hospitals, right? This is kind of a conduit on how blood gets kind of moved around the system. So here we have another kind of not a hospital directly impacted, but a supporting service, a third-party service, that third-party risk that we're talking about a lot this year, guys. How do these ransomware attacks on these third-party entities impact our healthcare services, right? It's shutting down hospitals, and it's really not in their control, right? So it's unfortunately indicative of what's happening in that industry.
Yeah, and this could impact literal people on the ground in ERs and hospitals and things like that because they're going around collecting blood. Right now they're doing it all manually. And then so that to be able to, you've got to be able to collate the data of the blood types with needs that hospitals have. And we're not talking, this is not some little, tiny little company. This is a company that's providing blood all over the southeastern United States, not just in one city or whatever, which would be bad in and of itself. So imagine to try to manually say, okay, we've got 50 units of type A, and we've got 3 different hospitals that have a need. I mean, it's going to create all kinds of supply chain issues.
And now they got to move extremely slow because they don't have computers to make sure that mistakes don't happen. They got to like now triple check their work.
Yeah. So OneBlood is a non-for-profit blood center. It operates in the southeastern United States. It provides a critical service by collecting, testing, and distributing a significant volume of blood products to ensure a stable blood supply for hospitals and patients in the region. OneBlood operates both donor centers and mobile donation buses to facilitate blood collection. The organization plays a crucial role in the healthcare system, especially in emergency and surgical situations where blood products are necessary. That doesn't sound fun if they are not able to do what they do for hospitals. That sounds life-threatening.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge in a bad way, for sure.
I mean, I guess I don't like to get political on the show or talk about politics too much, but I guess it's fair to say at the end of Joe Biden's administration that his whole cybersecurity strategy is not doesn't have a lot of teeth behind it at this point, right? I mean, guy's not running for president again. I think it's fair to say that he tried, but unfortunately, this stuff isn't getting anywhere where it needs to move, which is in the legislature. We need laws because businesses are starting to fight back against the regulations that are being put on them by certain organizations and certain government bodies that, quite frankly, businesses are questioning at this point whether or not they have the authority to do that. So they're challenging this stuff now. So it really has to happen in the laws, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit on how it is happening in the laws, but not really the way I think it needs to happen. So what steps can organizations start to take here to enhance their cyber resilience against these threats that are critical to their business to run, right? This is a critical service that these hospitals rely on in order to do things like perform surgeries and things like that. So just think about any business where that's the case, where a service you use is critical for you to operate every day or for you to deliver your product or service. That is not available to you for an extended period of time. What are some things businesses should be doing? I guess A, to plan around that, or B, if they find themselves in that situation without a plan, what can they do?
Well, first thing, especially, so keep in mind, OneBlood is a nonprofit, but they're a big nonprofit. So even if they have an internal IT staff or they have, external, but when you become a certain size, you got to do third-party risk assessments. You got to get someone to come in and just kind of, for lack of better words, judge what the current person is doing or current company is doing, and then give advice to say, hey, look, this needs to be tweaked, or you need to change this to best practices. But when you're making that type of money and you're doing that type of work, I think that's just as important for a second pair of eyes to look at the entire infrastructure.
Randy?
No, I'm good.
Nothing? You got nothing? You got nothing?
Yeah.
I got to figure out something to say to get you fired up. I mean, I would just say, at a minimum, if you can't do a full-blown assessment like Andre's suggesting, and he's right, at least look around and identify the things that I have laid out as potential risks, which are these third-party services that your business might use, and figure out a backup plan. It might just be, hey, we're going to do it on pen and paper, or we're going to manually issue checks, or whatever. It's going to probably be some manual process until you find a secondary service or a resilient way to continue to operate that, which isn't easy to do, right? So pen and paper typically is the easiest way to kind of go back to it when you're talking about technology. So just take a look at those things, take 30 minutes of your day, go and look and figure out and evaluate if there's any services that fall in that category of critical that you don't run and you have no control over, and figure out a backup plan. Payroll is one of the most common ones I can think of. Bookkeeping would be another one. Companies all the time are losing access to their online bookkeeping platforms, and they can't then send invoices. They can't collect money. And just think about that. If you don't have that for 2-3 days, what does that mean to you and your business? Can you pay your employees? Can you pay bills? Those are things you need to consider. So,
well, and to add to that before you move on, Brian. So
no. I had to make all that up because you wouldn't talk. So you
made me think of something else as soon as you started talking. From a business owner standpoint, because that's what you're talking about. From a business owner standpoint, the thing that most business owners don't think about, though, is there may be a company out there right now, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit or somewhere in between, that does blood donations, that will now step up and fill this gap. Y'all remember the CDK thing that had all the car dealers down for 2-3 weeks? Well, about, what was it, 15 to 17,000, somewhere in that ballpark. They were down for 2 to 3 weeks. We've talked to several car dealers since then, and you know what they did? They switched to a whole nother software. They're not using CDK anymore. And that could potentially happen here with their software being down and them being thwarted. Another company may jump up in their place. And so as a business owner, you got to keep that in mind too. You got to
talk about that
business, and you might lose competition. You might lose to your competition as well if you can't do it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute in more detail when we get to another topic. So
I got started.
Let's move on to this Fresnillo PLC cyber attack. We won't spend much time on this one. This Fresnillo company, they're the world's largest silver producer. There's, I guess sometimes when you say that, people think like jewelry and stuff, but silver is used for a lot more than just jewelry, and it's a pretty important mineral that we get out of the earth for a lot of different things. They reported unauthorized access to its IT systems, but the attack did not halt operations, but the full impact is still under assessment. I'm going to take a wild guess that a company like this probably doesn't have a ton of stuff in place where they can get a lot of forensic information to tell them a lot of what happened in the past. So they're taking measures now to bolster their cybersecurity defenses post-incident. So let's talk about it. Mining and natural resources sector, right? Easy for somebody to say, hey, I mine stuff out of the ground. Nobody wants to hack me. They got hacked. So what are the potential consequences? Why do cyber criminals want to hack a mining and natural resource company?
Okay. Well, obviously there's money. They're literally pulling money out of the ground. That's what mining is. And there's in the right rocks, there's tons of money there. But also this has a possibility to have geopolitical repercussions, because you have China as a nation state is pushing its mining companies, because if you own and control the minerals, you can own and control the world, is what it boils down to, because they would have to buy them all from you. So we know that the Chinese mining companies are pushing. And so this could be about that. Maybe they're going for company secrets. Maybe they're going for, insider information. Maybe they're going for a way that would give another company the edge to jump in and move ahead of this company and dethrone it, if you will, as the world's largest silver company. So there could be a lot of bad repercussions here, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And even if they're downplaying that, they're still operational, nevertheless, there could be supply shortages, which at the end of the day, it's going to affect us, the consumer, because every single thing we have has a little piece of silver in there that we need, our cell phones and all of the different stuff. So the consumers at the end of the day, as always, will pay the price.
So, I mean, they say it didn't halt operations, but we don't know how it impacted their business as of yet because the full impact is still under assessment. So we don't know what other areas of the business were impacted, and if that means they weren't able to do things like deliver on the silver that they pulled out of the ground to wherever it needed to go. Right? That's still, I guess, still at play here. Doesn't sound like this was ransomware, though. Are we all in agreement with that? That this was sounds like it was a system that was accessed by somebody who shouldn't have accessed it. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I mean, I'll definitely stay kind of in tune to it because I don't understand, quite frankly, what they're getting out of this other than information, right? And maybe that's what they're after. Maybe that's the important stuff. I know that this business, like you said, Randy, there is a definite arms race when it comes to certain minerals right now for certain reasons, right? AI being one of them. So, definitely interesting. We'll see what happens here. So moving right along, Columbus, Ohio, guys, they were cyber attacked a little bit ago. And as a result of that citywide ransomware attack, as I've warned on the show many times, we see 2 Columbus Division of police officers had their bank accounts hacked. The exact connection between the city cyber attack and the bank's hack is still unclear. I don't know why. The incident raises concerns about personal financial security of city employees during cyber crises. So I've said on this show, and I know you guys have heard me say it, that there's enough information on the dark web that cyber criminals have that they can basically just start pulling money out of your bank account. I've said it because I know it's happened to people. And that's what happened here with these police officers. And it's no doubt that they had enough information to where they were able to successfully complete these transactions, right? And you only need certain key pieces of information for a bank to allow you to take money through an ACH withdrawal or something like that, right? So we see how these cyber attacks on municipalities affect the employees. I think the biggest thing that I see, guys, and I don't know if you agree with this, when these municipal governments are getting hacked, their employees are getting the brunt of the cyber criminal activity. It's not really the residents or the community being impacted. And I would say they're pretty quick to pay the ransoms, right? And so they pay the ransom and their employees are the ones who have to deal with all the aftermath. Seems fair.
Yep. And especially with the ones with customer service where they're having to hear it from their clients yelling at them because whatever the service is not working. And then here they are when they go home and checking their accounts and, oh, wow, I was breached too. So one important thing on this article, it says, is they believe the initial cybersecurity incident, not the ones with the 2 police officers, happened from an email link, going back to phishing and everything we just talked about.
So it's interesting to me because one of the questions that I kind of have here up on the screen is what can companies do to protect employees' information? I'm not going to ask that question because it's just so open-ended and companies need to do a lot. I mean, this is why you do cybersecurity, because you have employees and you have their sensitive information and you need to protect it. Like, that's one of the things you need to protect as part of cybersecurity. And unfortunately, companies are failing miserably at it because all this really important information that cyber criminals can use to do things like take money out of your bank account is being exposed because companies just don't protect this information the way that they should. So with that being said, how far, like, we see all these lawsuits happening, right? And for whatever reason, guys, in the show notes here, I don't have the CrowdStrike story. So we're going to have to kind of work that in. So I apologize for that. But I just realized I don't have that in here, and I do want to talk about that because it's important. But at the end of the day, what I'm thinking about is all these lawsuits that are happening, right? We're going to talk about it with CrowdStrike. When do the employees turn around and be like, we're going to now sue our employee? Like, I see a day where employees quit jobs and sue employers because of cyber attacks.
Mm-hmm.
I see a day where employee handbooks in your agreement to work at the company says you can't if it's a cyber attack. That'll be crazy, right? Like your employee handbook basically says if there's a cyber attack, you can't come after us, or it's limited to whatever dollar amount.
Yeah, they might say that, but you can never, if there's gross negligence involved, it's meaningless, you know. Right. So like if you say enter this roller coaster ride at your own risk, and we haven't maintained it ever, and there's obviously bolts missing, and you get hurt, you can sue because that's gross negligence. But yeah, you're right. Maybe, I don't know. This is going to get interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I do see it happening, though. I definitely do see a day where these companies are going to pay the price when it comes to their employees when they have cyber attacks, no doubt. It's just the natural progression of where this stuff is all going when you involve lawyers, in my opinion. So,
but it's got to be something where like it's like mental hardship, or because money is money, right? But then it's the time and the stress to basically clean your credit, like to get your accounts back in order. So you think that's the angle it's going to be in order to actually for it to be profitable for someone to actually do that? Because if they stole, let's just say $30,000 from you, and now it's taking you 2 years to clean your credit. Once in a while, you get a pop-up from AT&T that an account is open, and you got to go re-explain the whole story. Right. Like that anguish, I think, is going to be how they're going to have to prove something.
Yeah, but I think, I think lawyers will work to try to do so. And with all of this stuff, it's all about getting a check. It doesn't necessarily need to go to court. If you can just get a business to write a check to a group of people or one person for amount of money that they're happy with, and that's how this stuff all plays out usually. So
yeah.
So let's update everybody on CrowdStrike real quick, because that's really why I thought of the lawsuit thing, because it's just so insane with everything that's going on. I mean, CrowdStrike was a big deal. It really is, I think, going to turn out to be a pivot point for the cybersecurity world and industry from two standpoints. Number one, it's really going to put a spotlight on the fact that companies are going to go after CrowdStrike for this failure, right? And it puts a spotlight on the fact that companies like ours, IT companies, the companies that provide kind of like that underlying technology that run these businesses, if they don't deliver, if they don't provide that service, that they are going to be held liable. So we're going to see like how this plays out for CrowdStrike and see how our society handles this mess with all these lawsuits that they're going to face as a result of companies like Delta, saying that they were losing millions of dollars a day as a result of this. Who's going to compensate Delta for that? And, like Randy said, you can put whatever you want in a contract and an agreement. It really doesn't matter until it goes to court and a judge can decide in 2 seconds whether to uphold that or not, or whether that's legal or not. I don't ever like my chances going into a courtroom with one person making a decision. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun to me. But this is also it's a publicly traded company. It's going to impact their share. It is impacting their share value.
42%.
A lot of people thought on day one that they were buying the dip, and it's dipped even deeper than anyone ever thought on day one. I know a lot of people who after day one, Tuesday or whenever that happened, they were like, oh, I'm buying CrowdStrike. Buy the dip. If you bought the dip, you lost a lot of money because it went down further from there. The CEO, he's starting to go through the ringer now with his reputation. It's crazy all the things that are happening, and they're it sounds like Delta is going to go after them for $500 million at least. And Microsoft is thinking about pulling back the access that a software program like CrowdStrike Falcon has, so it can't do things like this to the operating system. We can talk about that and what that play actually means. Does it really mean that, or is that a wag the dog type of situation where they're actually just trying to use the CrowdStrike situation to limit access to their, software? We can talk about it. So let's go. What do you guys think is going on here? What do you guys think is going to happen? How much do you guys think that this has hurt our industry in terms of people's appetite for investing into cybersecurity protections?
I mean,
let's talk about it.
You could probably bet money on whether or not there's going to be a payout, because the lawsuit is so big and the costs of settling it are going to be so high. They might just say, hey, let's settle for 400 million or something like that. This probably won't be the only lawsuit, because this one is talking about investors being hurt. So You're also going to have, just regular businesses that were down. I
was talking to a guy last night, Randy, who works at Lockheed Martin, and most of his division was down for 3 days.
Yeah. And that's a lot of money right there. And then you're also, this really boils down to what we talked about it with the week that it happened. I don't know if that's last week or the week before, but if they would have just rolled it out on 100 computers, because it's almost 100% bricked the computers that it was on. If they would have just rolled it out to 10 computers, they probably would have seen the issue. So yeah, there's a lot of implications here.
And Microsoft reported yesterday that that 8.5 million number that CrowdStrike is reporting, they're saying that's a small subset. They're saying that they believe it's more. They didn't report how much, but based on, I guess, logs that they may have access to or whatever, or calls, they're saying it's way more than 8.5.
So you're saying that CrowdStrike is on more than 8.5 million machines?
According to this article, that's what Microsoft is saying, that it was just a small subset.
So a small subset of Windows computers or
No.
of CrowdStrike computers?
Computers that had this
CrowdStrike?
The computers that were affected. Yeah.
Wow. So are you saying then that this didn't impact every computer that CrowdStrike was on?
No, not saying that.
Okay.
Here, I read it directly. It says,
okay.
According to Microsoft, the 8.5 million figure that was shared came from devices that shared crash reports with the company, but it's an optional feature, and they believe it's a much more.
Interesting.
But that's weird, because CrowdStrike is reporting that they have their agent on 8.5 million machines. They're basically saying we have 8.5 million customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says, but it clearly seems to be many millions more than previously revealed, based on this statement. I'll put the link in the chat.
No, it's also very possible that there's people who put CrowdStrike Falcon on as a trial, never became a client. They put it on, they stopped the service, never removed it from the machines, never removed it from the endpoint, so it was still running, right? But you would think it wouldn't get the update if it wasn't, a valid description, but who
Right.
knows? Who knows? So we'll learn more. I don't think we've seen the end of this, and I definitely think that this rises to the level where, I don't know how the company was started or founded or what the structure is, but I don't know how the CEO and his team survived this. I mean, I don't see it happening. So
Yeah, their stock price is down 42% right now.
So do you guys think that this impacts cybersecurity just in general? I mean, I know we've gotten questions from clients about like what we're using and questions around this, because obviously we don't use CrowdStrike, so none of our clients experience the issue. So, I think at first everyone's like, oh, good, we don't have to deal with this like everyone, other people in the world today. But at the same time, it sets in that like, hey, what are you using, and can that happen to us too, like with what you're using, right? And that question definitely comes into play. So if that comes into play, then only naturally that would lead you to think that there's people out there who are saying, why are we putting these tools on our system in the first place if they're going to take us down, right? Is that a thought that you think CEOs are really having, decision makers are having? And do you think there's going to be hesitation this is just going to be another reason why people don't do cybersecurity?
I don't think so. I think that this article, this incident made the conversation come up to say, hey, what if that happened to our company? How do we continue running? It's much slower, of course, but how do we continue running? It's kind of like saying, airbags kill X amount of people a year in a car accident, so maybe we shouldn't have the airbags. I don't know. I think it does more good than bad. So having it is better than not having it.
Yeah, and also there's the human brain tries to put everything in a box. We try to understand everything and put it in some kind of a working theory or whatever you want to call it. So the guy or girl who own a company that really don't want to do cybersecurity anyway, maybe because it's too expensive or whatever, they're going to hear this and go, oh yeah, shouldn't do it, because these people did it. It brought the whole internet down. But I think your person that's more worried about, their reputation, they're worried about staying competitive, they're worried about staying up and running, they have a whole different mindset. And so it's not going to make someone like that say, oh, I shouldn't get cybersecurity because it might break my systems.
Yeah, remember back in the days prior to ransomware, and people would have antivirus, and there was the whole thing of should we pay, should we not pay for antivirus, because you're going to get a virus anyways. But at least back then, for virus removals wasn't as bad as it is now. So it's that same concept. It's like, should we pay because it's gonna happen anyways.
Gotcha. So it just reinforced the people who already hated cybersecurity. It just reinforced them, and it's that whole tastes great, less filling debate, I guess, right? So let's move on to this last one, and what I alluded to earlier about laws. It's 2:00. I think we got to end the show. I just saw the time. We got to go. I got to go. I got to end.
We can save it for next week.
We got to save it for next week. We will. Unfortunately, got to talk about the Minnesota law next week. So we got to end it quick. I got it 2:00. I got to run. Thanks, everybody. Share the show. We'll see everyone next week. Take care.